Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. It started with the small things. The way Laura's smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore, or how she became more preoccupied with her phone, her fingers constantly flying across the screen. I'd been chalking it up to work stress. She had been putting in long hours, taking on new projects, and was always just tired. We all go through phases, I'd tell myself. Every marriage has its quiet spells. But this? I never saw this coming. It was a regular Tuesday evening, like any other, or so I thought. I came home later than usual, hoping to unwind, maybe grab a beer and catch up on some TV. As soon as I stepped through the front door, though, I felt it, a tension hanging in the air, so thick it was almost tangible. Laura was sitting on the couch, her legs tucked under her, a glass of wine in her hand. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was Mark standing by the window, arms crossed, looking entirely too comfortable in my home. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile as I hung my jacket on the hook. "Didn't know you were stopping by, Mark." He didn't answer right away, just gave me this tight-lipped smile and a nod, as if we were sharing some private joke. That's when it hit me, his presence wasn't casual. He wasn't here to shoot the breeze or have a beer. Something was off. Laura spoke first. "Alex, we need to talk." Her voice was calm, but not in the way you'd want it to be. It was the kind of calm that was rehearsed, practiced, like she'd been preparing for this moment for days, maybe weeks. My stomach dropped. I glanced between them, dread settling into my chest like a weight. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the crack forming around the edges. "Did something happen?" Laura didn't meet my eyes. She took a slow sip of her wine before setting the glass down on the coffee table. Mark shifted, looking uncomfortable but nowhere near as tense as he should have been in this situation. "It's about us," Laura said, her voice barely above a whisper. I sat down across from them, trying to brace myself for whatever was coming. "Okay, what do you mean?" Mark stepped forward, finally breaking his silence. His voice was soft, too soft for a man about to drop a bombshell. "Alex, there's no easy way to say this. Laura and we've been seeing each other." For a moment, I didn't react. I couldn't. The words didn't make sense in my head, like a foreign language I wasn't fluent in. Seeing each other? Seeing each other? What? My voice came out harsher than I intended, disbelief quickly giving way to a rising wave of anger. Laura finally looked at me, guilt etched across her face, but there was something else there too. Defiance? Resolve? "It wasn't planned," she said softly. "We didn't mean for it to happen. But it did." I stood up, pacing, my thoughts racing as I tried to process what they were saying. My wife. My best friend. Together. The betrayal sliced through me, sharper than I ever imagined. "How long?" I asked, my voice low, fighting to keep myself in check. Laura hesitated, but Mark answered for her. "Almost a year now." "A year?" I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. "A whole year? How the hell could you do this to me? Both of you?" Laura stood, crossing her arms tightly around her chest as if to shield herself from the storm she knew was coming. "It wasn't like we were trying to hurt you, Alex," she said, her voice shaking slightly now. "It just happened." "Oh, it just happened. Is that what you're telling yourself to make this easier?" I spat back. "You think that makes it better?" "Alex, listen," Mark started, but I cut him off. "No, you listen." I jabbed a finger in his direction, my anger now boiling over. "You were supposed to be my friend. We've known each other since college. How could you do this? How could you both stand there and act like this is just some misunderstanding?" Mark rubbed the back of his neck, glancing toward Laura, as if waiting for her to take the lead again. I could see the guilt flicker across his face, but it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Laura took a step forward, her voice softer now. Alex, we didn't come here to fight. We came to tell you because we think there's a way forward. For all of us. I stared at her, dumbfounded. A way forward? Laura, you've been cheating on me for a year with my best friend. What the hell are you talking about? Her eyes filled with something that looked almost like sympathy, which only made me angrier. We've been thinking, she said slowly. This doesn't have to mean the end of us. We can still be together, all three of us. I blinked, sure I hadn't heard her right. All three of us? Yes, Mark jumped in, his voice steady now, as if this was something they'd rehearsed. We think you should be part of it. We don't want to lose you, Alex. This can work. You can watch, you can participate. We could share this, together. My mind reeled. This was not just a betrayal, it was an insult. A violation of everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my friendship. They weren't just admitting their infidelity, they were proposing I become complicit in it. You want me to watch? I asked, incredulous. You seriously think that's going to fix this? Laura reached for my hand, but I pulled back, the disgust playing on my face. It's not about fixing it, Alex, she said softly. It's about a new kind of relationship. One where everyone's needs are met. I stared at her, at both of them, my heart pounding in my chest. A new kind of relationship. As if labeling it something fancy would make it okay, as if this whole twisted situation could be spun into something healthy. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. You're both sick, I whispered, stepping back, my head spinning. I can't believe this. I trusted you. I trusted both of you. Mark tried to take a step forward, but I put my hand up. No. Don't come near me. Just, leave. Both of you. For a moment, they hesitated, as if they hadn't expected me to react this way. But what did they expect? That I'd agree? That I'd just smile and play along in their sick fantasy? Without another word, they left, the door closing behind them with a soft click. And just like that, the life I thought I knew shattered, leaving only silence in its wake. The days that followed were a blur of anger, disbelief, and hurt. I barely slept. My mind was a jumbled mess, replaying that moment over and over, the way Laura's voice had wavered, the sick calmness in Mark's eyes as they revealed their betrayal, and then the audacity to suggest that I participate. How could they think that was something I would even consider? I ignored their texts and calls, deleted every message without reading it. But they didn't stop. Laura kept reaching out, her tone insistent, almost pleading. She wanted to talk again, to explain things more clearly, as if their little proposal was a misunderstanding that could be worked out with more discussion. By the time Saturday came, I had steeled myself. I wasn't going to ignore them anymore. If they wanted to meet, fine. I'd face them, but I wouldn't back down. I needed to know what the hell they were thinking. The moment they stepped into the kitchen, I knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. Laura had a manila folder tucked under her arm, and Mark looked oddly relaxed, as if this were just another business meeting. Thanks for agreeing to talk, Laura began, setting the folder down on the table between us. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying, but there was a determined set to her jaw that I hadn't seen before. Mark took a seat across from me, but I stayed standing, arms crossed, refusing to make this easy for them. I didn't agree to anything, I said coldly. But I'm here. So, what do you want now? Laura shot a quick glance at Mark before she sat down, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the folder. We've been talking, Alex. A lot. And we think we've come up with a solution that could work for everyone. A solution? I repeated, incredulity creeping into my voice. You think this is a problem that can be solved? Mark spoke up, his voice measured, as if he was talking me down from a ledge. Alex, we get it. You're angry. And you have every right to be. But what we're suggesting isn't about betraying you further. It's about creating something new. Something that can work for all three of us. I scoffed, shaking my head. I'm not interested in whatever twisted fantasy you two have cooked up. Laura leaned forward, her eyes pleading now. Please, Alex. Just hear us out. We've put everything down in writing. We want to be as transparent as possible. She slid the folder across the table, her eyes locked on mine. I hesitated, not wanting to touch it, but curiosity got the better of me. I flipped open the folder, revealing a stack of papers, neatly typed, every page meticulously numbered. The title at the top read, Mutual Relationship Contract. My stomach churned. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered under my breath. It's not what you think, Laura said quickly. We've outlined everything, our responsibilities, our expectations, your role, and my role. I cut in, my voice rising in disbelief. You actually think I'd have a role in this? Mark leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Alex, this is about setting boundaries. If we're all clear on what's expected, there won't be any misunderstandings or hurt feelings down the road. I stared at him, my hands trembling as I flipped through the contract. There were clauses, actual legal language detailing how often Laura and Mark could be together, how I was supposed to participate by watching or joining in their encounters. They had outlined everything down to the day, as if scheduling their betrayal made it more palatable. You think this is going to make me feel better? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, my disbelief now giving way to fury. That you can put all of this in writing, make it legal, and I'll just, what? Go along with it. That's not the point, Laura said, her tone desperate. We want you to have a say in how this works. We don't want to leave you out, Alex. Leave me out. I exploded, slamming the folder shut. You already left me out. The second you decided to sleep with him behind my back, you left me out. Mark, always the calm one, tried to placate me. Look, we've even added provisions for you. If you want to be with someone else, that's fine. We're open to that too. I let out a hollow laugh, stepping away from the table, needing the distance to keep from breaking something. This isn't about me wanting someone else. It's about the fact that you two are trying to normalize something disgusting. You've turned my marriage into a contract negotiation. Laura flinched at my words, tears brimming in her eyes, but I didn't care. I had given them both everything, my trust, my loyalty, and now they sat there acting like this was just another phase, something we could smooth over with a bit of paperwork. And what's this? I asked, pointing to a section of the contract labeled consequences. You actually think you can punish me if I don't agree to this insanity? It's not about punishment, Laura whispered, her voice breaking. It's just, if you don't want to do this, we need to know how to move forward. Move forward? I snapped. You think I'm signing this garbage? You think any of this is okay? Mark stood up now, his voice firmer than it had been before. Alex, calm down. We're trying to make this work. If you don't want to be part of it, fine. But we need to protect ourselves too. I stared at him in disbelief. Protect yourselves. You're the ones who destroyed everything, and now you're worried about protecting yourselves. Laura reached across the table, her voice trembling as she spoke. Alex, please. We didn't want it to come to this. We had it notarized because we thought it would be fair, for everyone. We want to be honest. We don't want to hurt you any more than we already have. Notarized? I repeated, stunned. You actually got this thing notarized? Mark nodded, unfazed. We thought it would make it more legitimate, less room for misinterpretation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They had gone from breaking my trust to turning this twisted relationship into a legal agreement, something they expected me to sign as if it would magically fix everything. I picked up the contract and threw it back on the table, my heart pounding in my chest. I'm not signing this. I'm not playing along with your sick game. Laura's face crumpled, her tears finally spilling over. Alex, please. But I was already walking out of the kitchen, my head spinning with rage and disgust. They could notarize whatever they wanted. I was done. The anger I felt after Laura and Mark's proposal didn't dissipate, it solidified into a burning resolve. They had crossed a line that couldn't be undone, and the more I thought about it, the more I knew that this wasn't just about healing or moving on. It was about justice, about making them understand the gravity of their betrayal. I began my plan the very next day. My career as a private investigator had taught me the art of precision and stealth. I knew exactly how to gather evidence, how to manipulate situations to my advantage, and, most importantly, how to be relentless. First, I turned my attention to the recordings. I had installed hidden microphones in various parts of the house the night Laura and Mark had presented the contract. Over the past few days, I had captured countless conversations, Laura's remorseful monologues, Mark's attempts to justify their actions, and their repeated discussions about the arrangement they wanted. Sitting at my desk, I reviewed the tapes. One recording in particular stood out, Laura and Mark discussing their future plans and their expectations from me. I made sure to create a backup of these recordings and encrypted them securely. They would be critical in the upcoming legal battle. The next step was to address the financial side of things. I canceled all our joint bank accounts and credit cards. I didn't just freeze our assets, I severed every connection. No more shared expenses, no more joint investments. Laura and Mark would be left to deal with the fallout of their actions, and I would ensure they felt the financial strain immediately. I made a quick trip to the lawyer's office, filing for divorce and presenting the notarized contract and recordings as evidence. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer who had dealt with many messy divorces, reviewed everything with a practiced eye. This contract is unprecedented, Jennifer said as she sifted through the pages. But it's legally binding, especially since it was notarized. And these recordings, they'll be invaluable in court. They show clear intent and premeditation. That's what I'm counting on, I said. I want to make sure they pay for what they've done, emotionally, financially, legally. Jennifer nodded. Understood. We'll prepare a strong case. I'll also initiate a request for a restraining order if necessary, given the level of harassment you've reported. With the legal steps underway, I turned my attention to their professional lives. I knew Mark and Laura's jobs were important to them. Laura worked as a project manager at a tech firm, while Mark was a respected architect. Both were high-profile positions, and I used that to my advantage. I contacted a few anonymous tip lines at their workplaces, providing them with carefully chosen details about the affair, the contract, and the nature of their personal issues. I made sure to include enough facts to stir up concern without revealing my identity. The results were swift. Laura's HR department scheduled an emergency meeting with her, and Mark was called in for a similar discussion. From what I gathered through the grapevine, the revelations had created a scandal. Mark's firm was already re-evaluating his role, and Laura's position was becoming increasingly precarious. Meanwhile, at home, the immediate effects of my financial moves started to hit Laura and Mark hard. Laura came home one evening, looking frazzled. She tried to use the credit card at a grocery store, only to find it declined. "What do you mean it's declined?" she asked, her voice rising in panic as she stared at the cashier, who looked equally baffled. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems your card is inactive," the cashier said, shrugging apologetically. Laura's phone rang as she was trying to resolve the issue. It was Mark, and his voice on the other end was tight with stress. "Alex, we need to talk." "No, we don't," I said, my tone cold. "I've already done everything I needed to. You're on your own now." The next day, Laura showed up at my office, her face lined with frustration and desperation. "Alex, you can't do this. We need to figure something out." I didn't let her in. Instead, I spoke through the intercom. "Laura, there's nothing left to discuss. You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences." As she walked away, I saw the realization settling in: their lives were unraveling, and it was all because of the choices they made. I felt a grim satisfaction. They had underestimated me, thinking that I would crumble or accept their terms. Instead, I was tearing down everything they had tried to build on the ruins of my trust. At the end of the week, Jennifer and I met to prepare for court. She reviewed the documents and evidence meticulously, her face a mask of professional concentration. "We're ready," Jennifer said, her voice firm. "With the evidence we have, the notarized contract, and the recordings, we have a solid case. They'll be facing not just financial penalties, but also significant professional fallout." I nodded, feeling a sense of cold resolve. "Good. I want them to understand that actions have consequences. They destroyed my life. It's only fair they face the repercussions." The stage was set for the courtroom battle. I had done everything I could to prepare. Now, it was time to see how far the fallout would reach and how deeply it would impact Laura and Mark. The courtroom was stark and intimidating, a far cry from the cozy familiarity of home that had been shattered by Laura and Mark's betrayal. The air was charged with tension as Jennifer and I sat at our table, preparing for the battle ahead. Across from us, Laura and Mark sat with their attorney, a slick man in a tailored suit who looked far too confident for my liking. Jennifer gave me a reassuring nod. "We're ready for this. Remember, stick to the facts and let the evidence speak for itself." The trial began with the judge entering the room, his robes sweeping behind him as he took his seat. He cleared his throat and glanced over the case files before looking up at us. "We are here today to address the matter of Alexander Carter versus Laura Carter and Mark Thompson. Mr. Carter is filing for divorce on grounds of infidelity and is seeking damages for emotional and financial distress." Laura's attorney rose to his feet, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, we acknowledge that there has been a personal issue between Mr. Carter and my clients, but we believe that the terms of the agreement presented were made with full consent and were intended to be amicable." Jennifer stood and faced the court. "Your Honor, this contract was presented to Mr. Carter under duress and was intended to legitimize the affair in a way that is both morally and legally unacceptable. The evidence we have, including recordings and the notarized contract, demonstrates clear premeditation and manipulation on the part of Laura and Mark." The judge nodded and turned to Laura and Mark. "Do you have any statements or evidence to present before we proceed?" Laura's face was pale, her eyes red and puffy. She stood up shakily, her voice trembling. "Your Honor, I want to acknowledge the pain I've caused Alex. This wasn't meant to hurt him. The contract was our attempt to make sense of an impossible situation." Mark, trying to appear composed, added, "We believed we were being transparent. We thought it was the best way to handle our situation, and we're deeply sorry for the distress this has caused Alex." Jennifer took the floor again. "The issue here isn't just about the emotional betrayal, Your Honor. It's about the calculated effort to involve Mr. Carter in their relationship under the guise of a legal contract. This is not just a matter of personal failure but a violation of trust and an abuse of legal systems for personal gain." She presented the evidence, starting with the recordings. The courtroom was silent as snippets of conversations were played, Laura and Mark discussing their plans and their expectations for me. Their words were raw, exposing their lack of remorse and their manipulation. The judge listened intently, his face a mask of concentration. As the recordings concluded, he turned to Laura and Mark. "Do you wish to respond to this evidence?" Laura's attorney tried to deflect. "We argue that the recordings were taken without consent and are therefore inadmissible." Jennifer countered swiftly. "The recordings were made in Mr. Carter's home with his consent and were legally obtained. They are admissible as evidence of the premeditated nature of the affair and the subsequent proposal." After hearing both sides, the judge adjourned to deliberate. The break felt endless, and I paced outside the courtroom, my nerves frayed. Jennifer remained calm, reviewing her notes and reassuring me. Finally, the judge returned, and the courtroom filled with a heavy silence as he prepared to deliver his verdict. After reviewing the evidence and considering the arguments presented, this court finds in favor of Alexander Carter, the judge announced. The contract between the parties is deemed invalid due to the circumstances under which it was presented and the intent behind it. Furthermore, the court recognizes the emotional and financial distress caused to Mr. Carter. Laura's face fell, and she gripped the edge of the table for support. Mark looked disbelieving, his face flushed with anger and frustration. The court will award damages for emotional distress and financial loss, the judge continued. Additionally, I am ordering a restraining order against Laura Carter and Mark Thompson to prevent further harassment or contact. As the judge's gavel came down, signaling the end of the case, Laura's attorney tried to salvage some dignity. We will review our options and may consider an appeal. Jennifer and I exchanged a look of grim satisfaction. We've won this round, she said quietly. But the battle for your emotional recovery is just beginning. Laura and Mark gathered their things, their faces a mix of anger and defeat. Laura glanced at me as she left, her eyes full of regret. Alex, I never wanted it to come to this. I shook my head, unable to muster any sympathy. Laura, you and Mark made your choices. I hope you understand now that actions have consequences. As they walked out, I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders. The courtroom battle was over, but the real challenge, rebuilding my life, had only just begun. The financial and professional repercussions for Laura and Mark would follow, but for now, I was focused on moving forward, step by step, reclaiming my life from the wreckage they had left behind.